Bonnie, it's your turn. Islands of Innovation, we invited more or less the tipping wheel, and you are going to tell us something about the tipping wheel.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. I've never been nervous for a speech before, but it's amazing what 2 years of isolation will do for you. Maybe I can get some tips from the Islanders later about how to deal with that. No, just kidding. So my name is Bonnie Lewtas. I've been working my entire career to help islands become sustainable, and now I'm also a lecturer at the university, the HZ University of Applied Sciences for Global Project and Change Management. And I see my slides there. Okay, yeah, so I'm here to talk to you about why we're here today. So 2 words stick out in my mind, and that's islands and innovation. So the Islands of Innovation project is what gathered us all here today, and here are the islands that are involved in the project. And when I think of these 2 words, they often go hand in hand because islands are naturally innovative. When you're all the way there in the middle of the ocean, you have to learn how to do more with less, which is, in essence, innovation. But that would be a bit too easy if we did a 4-year Interreg project on analyzing innovation on islands, so we had to throw in a curveball, which is policy. And policy doesn't always have the same reputation. So, although policy can support innovation, it can also hinder it. So we wanted to develop a tool analyzing policy on islands and making sure that it really, from the bottom up and also top down, supports innovators on islands. So, I stole a little quote from Sanders' presentation, which is, we not only have to think about what innovators can do for us, I changed the word innovators, but also what we can do for them. So the Islands of Innovation project developed tipping. And so tipping is an approach, a tool, and a workshop philosophy, all wrapped up into this nice guide. So we also integrate the idea of the dance floor. So that's taking not old concepts, but established concepts and theories about innovation and applying them into a new tool, getting a dance floor of different stakeholders together, and then having the result of actionable steps of what policy can actually do to support innovation. So the tipping wheel can help to create a benchmark between parts of an island or different sectors on the island. It can help us analyze challenges, it can help us create new brainstorms, and just in general get the ball rolling with innovation. It also helps to merge the 2 top-up and bottom-down sectors, or the 2 top-up and bottom-down approaches, so that we're all dancing on the same floor. So the wheel has 8 spokes, and it looks like this. So these are the different strategies that help us analyze the success of how well the government is doing with supporting innovation on the island. So for example, you can work with new challenges in the creative sector. You can establish long-term cooperation with SMEs and NGOs. You can stimulate the Young Entrepreneurs Network, which is especially important on islands because there is often a trend of young people leaving the island, and we want to avoid that because islands are also a great place to be, so they should be very attractive for young people. And we want to involve the community and so on. So basically, the tool helps us to analyze how well the policy is doing within each one of these components. Yeah. So each strategy is made up of 4 components, which are all comprised into a workshop. The goal is to get from the status quo to the desired future. So the inspiration is what guides us, and then we have different options of how we can do that. Those lead to practical examples. So what I'm explaining to you now is basically how the tipping guide is organized. So we have these inspirations per spoke that you saw in the wheel, the different options. Then we have real-life examples of how islands have actually implemented these. And then we have an assessment of how well we're doing now and what our dream is for the future. So this is what it looks like. So for example, I pulled this out of the guide. This is chapter 1, working with the creative sector. So one thing that you can do is stimulate experiments with new technologies and new societal concepts. So those are things we've heard a lot of today. You can also stimulate the development of creatives and new products and ventures. And you can stimulate new markets within which they can operate. And the tipping guide helps you to evaluate how well you are doing within all of those components. And then we have examples. So the result of this is that the policymakers host a workshop together with the local stakeholders on the island to facilitate this dance floor. And you are able to measure, based on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you feel you're doing within each of these components. So you can see here the result of a real workshop that we hosted with an island. So it's possible that when you want to evaluate a certain component of your policy, let's say you're just choosing working with the creative sector, you can choose one aspect or you can choose multiple. In this case, we chose all of them, so we worked with all eight aspects, which makes for a quite complex workshop. But if you feel like it's better to hone in on just one or two, you can also do that. And so you can see here, this green part is the status quo, so how the policy supports innovation now. And then the larger green part is the desired future. Of course, eventually you would want to get all the way to the edge, but it's the desired future of a realistic scenario. Okay, so in 2019, we finalized our tipping approach and we released it to the world. And this was in the form of a guide, which we also made available for PDF download. Any island in the entire world could use it, and we had tipping coaches. So the guide actually trained coaches how to implement workshops on their own islands. So what we learned from that is that tipping does work. People on islands want to try tipping, so we had quite a lot of enthusiasm asking us to implement tipping on different islands. But what we'd also realized is that people don't necessarily want to train themselves on how to become a trainer with a book. So these trainers that we had helping the tipping coaches facilitate the workshops were quite an essential component of the success. So we thought, okay, then we can just go to travel to different islands and help tipping coaches run workshops. Well, first of all, islands are quite isolated, so it's not all islands are isolated, of course, but we had, for example, some interest from Polynesian islands. It's not necessarily practical to fly all the way to Polynesia every time you want to host a 2-day workshop. And then, of course, came COVID, so this was solved for us. So we went back to Interreg and we said, okay, tipping works, people want to use tipping, but how do we get it to the wider island audience? And they granted us a 1-year extension to digitize tipping. So not only being able to have the book as a downloadable resource, but we would also like to develop masterclasses. So this is the stage we're in now, so we can celebrate a bit. This is actually not the closing of the Islands of Innovation project, but we've been granted a 1-year extension. So what we plan to do is to have these masterclass formats, and I'm sure quite a few of you have heard of masterclasses. So you basically have a coach who appears in person and guides you along this process. And what we've decided to do is, with support of all of our island partners, that each partner films a module, relates it to real-life examples that are happening on their island, and then guides us through the chapters on training the trainers, basically. So for this pilot project, we've selected the Azores to be the first group of islands that pilot this. One of the reasons for that is that First of all, the Azores has done incredible work on our project to date, but also that they have an island archipelago. So it's a nice place to pioneer the philosophy on different islands of different sizes within one archipelago. So what will happen is we will develop this new process, these master classes, and then we will, through these, train the tipping coaches in the Azores, and they will go to their islands and then host tipping workshops. And with these results, we will get the feedback both from the workshop participants and also from the coaches themselves and refine the process. And our goal for this is that we will be able to spread the tipping approach to make policy really support innovation on islands in the future. Yeah, so this is the Azores. We had the luxury of being able to go there for our last partner meeting, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I've heard that we have a very special guest from the Azores today to also speak to you about how they will go forward with the Islands of Innovation project. So by digitizing the tipping process and creating these interactive coaching sessions, we're also increasing innovation within our own project. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions, of course. Any questions?
Do you have any questions?
No, you make me change my program because you already told more or less that the next step in using the tipping guide is to the Azores. And in my original program, I must read his name, Mr. Pedro Faria y Castro, was the last speaker because of the Azores. But I think it's the moment now he can tell us about the Azores because you made already, you have the path for him. So,
I'm just trying to be innovative.
Eh? Is it a good idea you can do it? It's a very good idea. Okay. May I invite you, please? If there are no questions for Hannah at the moment.
Yeah, then maybe I have a question.
Okay, okay. I take the microphone because that's everybody can hear you. There must be a button, but you can find him.
I was super intrigued about the point about the youth. You say, okay, how with the youth networks regarding innovation. Can you tell a bit about how this results with them or how this resonates with them?
Yeah, exactly. So I can give a concrete example. So when we were visiting the Azores, I guess in 2019, we looked at this project called Terceira Tech Island, which is actually a project that was financed and, well, at least supported by the government through policy, that the island would invest in these coding workshops for new startups on the island. So they actually, facilitated through their adapted policies that youth who were already living on the island would get their stay and their training funded to become coders, and also especially female coders, and then start companies on the island. So that's an example of how youth can be involved, but another way is that we actually try to integrate them into the dance floor itself. So when we host these tipping workshops, you can even invite a 6-year-old, and sometimes they have really great ideas. So it's not just about talking to people from one sector or with one different background, but also really integrating the youth.
Okay. Any questions more? Mark.
There's a question. That is that there is this EU Island Secretariat called NISOI. And I think that there some of this umbrella for at least energy-related project development and support for islands. Are you already in contact with them, or can you consider that? Because I think that this is this can be a really important tool also to get a broader exposure.
Yeah, I would like to pass that question on to one of my colleagues. Are we already in contact with them? No.
No.
Yeah, so if...
I think that would make a lot of sense. Of course, NISO is mainly focused on energy, but then it can be one of the branches.
Yeah.
I think it would make a lot of sense to also create impact from what we've done over here and make it work throughout all other islands.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Sure,
thank you for the
sure.
tip. And energy is also a large component of the work that we've been doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
good point. Good point. Any questions more in a moment? Are you still there? Of have I to tell a joke? Because I see some eyes a little bit. Okay, everybody there? Can we? No joke. No joke. No joke. Can we continue? Hannah, thank you.
Bonnie,
Oh, Bonnie, thank you. Yeah, a lot of names. No, Bonnie, thank you.
you're welcome.
Very interesting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mr. Fario